Welcome to the journey of writing your first novel. And before we get into any of my ideas, the first thing that I want to say is everyone in this call has made a fantastic choice by deciding that you're going to do this. Um, and I'll explain why. I do believe that writing a book is one of the most profound things you can do as a human being. And I think to call it a hobby is an understatement, a massive understatement. I'm a big believer that when you write a story or tell a story, that the story also rewrites you. This is something that you'll learn a lot and change on a personal level, and you'll also leave a legacy behind. Who here feels motivated by legacy? Who here wants to leave something that people after them will read? Has anyone ever thrown a book away? Like actually put a book in the trash? Okay, good. I was hoping the answer to that would be
No, I have.
no. Okay, really?
Yeah,
Wow, what was the story there?
it was the same as the story that I'm on now. But
Oh, your own book. Okay, your own book.
yeah, but
I hope you've
because
never thrown away anyone
obviously,
else's book.
oh, huh?
I hope you've never thrown away somebody else's book.
No, no, but it looked like somebody a 5-year-old had wrote.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can do something about that over the next few weeks. Has anyone here ever picked up a book that's secondhand? I'm assuming yes, probably everybody. I think almost every book that I own is secondhand. So books circulate, but they don't usually get destroyed, right? They stick around for a very long time. The book I was just reading was Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell, which I really enjoyed. But that copy of the book that I have, that actual copy, I think is from the 60s. So that's a 60-year-old book that I was holding. And it'll probably still be around a lot longer because I'm not going to toss it out, right? So if you write something, whether it exists in digital or physical form, it's going to probably outlive you for quite some time. And you could still be touching people's hearts and minds um, for decades to come, potentially even longer. Most importantly, as well, I think one more thing. This is truly something that you're doing for yourself. And as we get older, and we often end up getting mired down in duties and get mired down in what other people need from us. And this is something that you're doing purely for yourself, just because it inspires you and it lights you up. And I don't want to understate how important that is. That is incredibly personally nourishing. So before we get into all of today's ideas, first thing I want to do is just a big high five into the webcam to everybody here for deciding that you're going to write a book. Amazing choice. So writing a novel can seem very big and very daunting, and it is big. This is a big undertaking. I would compare it to deciding that you're going to run a marathon, or deciding that you're going to climb a mountain. It's on about that level of achievement, I would say. But in spite of being big, it's not complicated. In fact, it really is just four steps, four stages that you're going to go through when you're writing a book. Let's talk about those. Let's take a look at those stages together now. I'm actually going to kind of sketch this out with you guys. Um, any guesses? Anybody want to volunteer what they think step one is? Let's say you've just had an idea. You're excited to turn it into a novel. What's step one? What's the first thing you're going to do with your idea? Hmm. Yep. 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 Everything that you guys just wrote all kind of comes under the banner, I would say, of planning. Uh, let's share the screen here. So, step one, if we're going to take this one stage at a time, this first bullet, this first step is going to be planning the thing, right? And you would be surprised by how many people completely skip this. So let's talk about planning a little bit first. As I go through each of these stages, I'm going to give you just in very simply in a couple of sentences what the right idea is, like what the key is to doing each of these things well. So planning is like if you were going to build a house, you wouldn't want to just start throwing a pile of materials together and just see what it turns into. You'd want at least some kind of blueprint, right? Like a rough sketch of the story before you go in and you write it. Now you can obviously plan in a very light way. or you can plan something in a lot of detail. That's up to you, and it's up to your personal preferences. And there's going to be a lot of focus on that in next week's workshop. A quick show of hands: who feels more like a plotter, and who feels more like a pantser? Who here is like a I need to know every detail up front, and who here is like I don't even like planning at all. Plotter, pantser. Terry's more of a pantser. Naya's converted to a plotter.
I'm definitely a planner.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it's probably about 50-50 with you guys. Um, for those of you guys that have a tendency to just skip this step entirely, like there's zero plan whatsoever. Um, although you can do this, the people that I've helped that have finished and that have done pretty well, by which I mean they have actually published something or they've signed with an agent or you know the kind of results that a lot of writers want. Almost all of them have ended up somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, doing at least a little bit of planning. Even the people who I helped that were initially hardcore pantsers, like Jennifer comes to mind as one of the most successful ones, is now more of a plantser. And so I would recommend for everybody here doing at least the minimum effective dose of planning, which doesn't have to be very detailed. I would say if you're a pantser and you still want to leave yourself a whole load of room to just see how it turns out, at least giving yourself some milestones, even just very basic ones, will save you an awful lot of editing work later and will also mean that your project is much less likely to get abandoned, which happens to a lot of pantsed books. So the key to planning is just to actually have a plan. And there are a lot of basic tools that you can use, and I'm going to be showing you some of them next week. But in essence, as long as you're not 100% winging it, you've got some kind of plan in place. You've basically already done this step successfully. So what do you do once you've got a plan? What's next? Anybody want to volunteer and answer? What do we do once we've got a plan? Yep. Yeah, Lawrence, you got it. So if we have a plan in place, then the next thing that I want to get down is a first draft. So that's going to be step two. Let's put that here. Okay, all right. So step two is going to be drafting. Let's talk about drafting and the best way to think about drafting next. So drafting is just creating the raw material. And that first draft that you're putting together is just a raw lump of clay. And if you imagine that the final product that you're after is like a beautiful pot that's wonderfully painted and decorated and it's a perfect shape. Your first draft, if you're making a pot like that, you don't expect the rough material to look anything like that, right? So really your first draft is just you telling yourself the story for the first time. And all you need to do is sit down and put words on the page until it's all down on paper. And the key to drafting well is not being talented or getting everything right or doing it in one take or not making any mistakes. It's none of those things. The key to creating a good first draft is just showing up. That's it. All you need to do to succeed here is show up. And so the philosophy that gets talked about a lot, you've probably heard this before, is don't get it right, get it written. Don't get it right, get it written. All you're doing is creating the clay so that you can do the shaping later. That's all it is. Okay, so let's say that you've shown up and you've shown up and you've shown up, and it's not perfect, but you've at least got something that has a beginning and a middle and an end. What's step three? What comes next? I saw Ray say it. Yep, editing. Yeah, you got it. So editing is going to be the next step. 3 out of 4. Okay. So let's talk about editing next. So this is the process of going back to turn this raw material into something polished that could actually be published. So if the first draft is just creating this lump of clay, this messy lump of clay, then editing is all about having the skill and the understanding to shape that into a beautiful, finely crafted finished product. And editing is what I'm going to talk about in the third week of this workshop. The key to success with editing is actually the quality of the feedback that you're getting. So, yes, of course, you are the person that's going to need to go back and rewrite certain parts of the book, figure things out, change things. But oftentimes you'll find that the book can only really rise to the degree of feedback that you've had on it. And so, if the feedback that you've had is not very helpful and it's very shallow, you're going to miss most of the problems in the book. You're not going to see them for reasons that I'll talk about in a second. And that's going to make it very difficult to edit effectively. Whereas if you have deep feedback and you've got a really good understanding of what all the problems are, then you'll be able to find and address and fix all of them, and you'll end up with a much better end product. So the key to success with editing is the quality of the feedback that you're getting on the book. But we'll talk about that more later. What happens when you've got something completely edited, like it's all done? It's good to go. What's the final stage in the process? Yeah, proof, I would say, is part of editing. What are we going to do? Yep. Yeah, Jane, you got it. Publishing. So the last step in the process, last thing that we're going to tackle is publishing the book and getting it to an audience. So let's add this here onto our map. And this is the last stage in the process. So see what I'm doing. Okay, so publishing comes last. All right. So when it comes to publishing, this is the process of getting the book in print and getting it to a real audience, which is intimidating, understandably. Anyone here find the whole idea of publishing something and having loads of people read it a little bit scary? Right? Even getting feedback can be scary. So having people read the finished product, I completely understand. Um, Actually getting something to an audience, if you're open to different ways of doing that, is nowhere near as hard as it sounds. And that I'm going to be breaking down in the fourth week of this workshop. But the key with publishing in large part is just being ridiculously patient. And also being flexible and open in how you reach your audience. So if we look at some of the people that have helped to do that, Victoria, Cece, Alana, you guys have probably seen me interview these folks in the past. The thing that all of them have in common is that they were just ridiculously patient. I mean, like getting rejected 80 to 100 times before they finally managed to hear yes. And a lot of them also being flexible enough to be willing to change paths. When I think of Scott Palmer in particular, he was determined from the get-go to get something published traditionally. And once he learned more and he had experienced more of that process, he completely changed his mind and is now very much the self-publishing guy. And he's done very well with that. He got to #1 in Arthurian fantasy on Amazon, which was really cool. So that's the process. Now, for most of you guys here, this is not news. Some of you might be thinking, yeah, well, duh, Max. I kind of already knew that these were the things that I had to do at some point. But the thing about these things is, even though they're straightforward, we still know that most books that are started are not finished, right? And in fact, even today, amongst this group, probably most projects that you guys have started, you didn't end up finishing. Um, Quickly put a number in the chat. How many unfinished stories do you have on your hard drive? If you're willing to share. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So everything that all the kind of numbers that you guys are listing here are, by the way, very normal. Very normal. Um, and this is not because there's something wrong with you. It's not because you're not cut out for this. It's not because you don't have enough discipline. It's nothing like that. The biggest lesson for me in the last 6 years of helping people write books, and this didn't even really fall into place until January of this year, is the real reason why most books aren't finished. And I'm going to share that with you now. And that is that books don't go unfinished because of lost motivation or because of self-doubts. or because the writer wasn't talented enough, or because they weren't disciplined enough. All of those things are kind of downstream of something else. Most books go unfinished because the writer gets lost inside their own project. The writer gets lost inside their own project. So if you want to write something down, here is what I would love for you to write down. The biggest thing that prevents writers from finishing their books is disorientation. Disorientation. And this is what I call the halfway trap. And you guys have seen me post about this before. Looks a little something like this, right? So this is the halfway trap. The halfway trap is that cycle of starting books and feeling really excited about it, but then you lose your bearings. You kind of lose track of the story and how you're supposed to carry it through to the finish. And then before you know it, you find yourself just starting on another book. And when you do this, you leave a kind of trail of half-finished books behind you, which is essentially what you guys were commenting when you put those numbers a moment ago. So to give you this trap in a little bit more detail, step one that you can see here on the screen is the honeymoon, right? So this honeymoon phase at the beginning, you're excited. You've just had the idea. You're very inspired. The words are really flowing out of you. Anyone feel like they're kind of in that honeymoon with their book right now? Or a project right now? I would guess that most of you are probably somewhere in the middle if you're coming along to this today. But maybe some of you here are in that honeymoon. That phase is really fun. For a lot of people, that's the most fun part of writing the book. It's a little bit like being at the beginning of a marriage, right? The two of you are in Hawaii together, right? The weather looks like Marta's Zoom background, right? The ocean is sparkling. Everything's great. You're in heaven. Step two is when we start getting into trouble, and that's what you can see here in the middle of the diagram. A lot of people call this the muddling middle, but it doesn't necessarily mean the middle of the draft. This can happen sometimes after you finish the first draft. Quickly leave me a comment. Who here normally finds themselves getting lost in the middle of the draft itself? And who here is lost in editing? You can just put drafting or editing in the chat. Edits, edits, drafts, edits, edits. Yeah. So for a lot of you guys, it's actually more of an editing thing. You just get to this point where it feels like the book is too big to hold all of it in your head, and the story is all tangled up, and it's really hard for you to see what the book needs next. It's like being in a sort of thick fog, right? And then step three that we see is withdrawal. So you can see that on the far right of the diagram here with the little door, right? Every time you open the book up, it just feels like it's too much and you don't know what to do next with it. And so what happens is that you quietly start to back away from the book. And for most writers, there isn't like one moment or a big dramatic announcement or anything like that. It's just that one day, slowly, you just stop opening the document. And of course, emotionally, where do you want to go back to? Well, where you want to be is back here, right? And so you're craving the honeymoon. And so what happens is that from here, it loops all the way back around and you do this again, but just with a new book. And that cycle is exactly what I mean when I say the halfway trap. And I will explain in a second how to get out of this. But this can be troubling to writers because a lot of aspiring authors have carried this identity of I'm a writer for years, for a very long time, but without yet finishing anything. And so the unfinished novel becomes this sort of strange, suspended identity. Because you guys can tell me if you can relate to this. You don't really feel like a beginner. You're not a beginner because you've been doing this for too long. And you don't feel like you're just a hobbyist because you take it more seriously than that, right? But you also don't feel like a real author yet because you haven't yet finished or published anything. And so you end up in this kind of in-between limbo. And this is the halfway trap. And the majority of writers that you meet in writing forums, Facebook groups, writer meetups, most people are living in this sort of space. And this is where most projects get stuck. And now you know why most novels that are started are never finished. So hopefully this is starting to get clearer. Don't worry though, we are going to talk about solutions. We are now going to talk about solutions. Okay. So here's the big thing that I want you to know. Um, the fact that you have had a hard time finishing anything up until now is not an inability to succeed creatively. Um, every single person sitting on the call can do this, and all of you guys are capable. And I'm not just saying that as rah rah motivational, you can do it. I know for a fact that all of you can do it because I've done it before and I've worked with about 400 people. And when the sample size is that big, you've kind of seen everything, right? So if you have a full-time job and kids and you're really busy, perhaps it'll take a bit longer, but you can definitely do this. I've seen people with no formal education that have managed to write books. I've seen people that have written books on their commutes. I've helped blind people to write books. I even had one person who I helped that had dementia, and she was having a really hard time keeping all the ideas together, Lynn. But she still finished and published something. And uh, I do believe that essentially anyone that wants to write a book can. So the difference, the big difference, is not a talent difference. The thing that's different is that these people had figured out how to get out of that little cycle, that halfway trap, and they did it by having just a different approach. And when you escape that halfway trap, you become what I call a finisher, which simply means that you become the kind of person, it becomes your whole approach, it becomes your whole identity. You just become the kind of person that always finishes what they start. And often, once these people have done that with their first book, a lot of them, and you can watch the interviews that I've done with some of these folks, they end up doing it for book after book after book. Because once you've got the hang of it, finishing is kind of just what you do. So what you may be thinking is, what is the difference then? So what does a finisher do differently to somebody who's finding themselves stuck in that halfway trap? And so this is what it is fundamentally. If I show you again this picture, so let's check this out one more time. The difference, the thing that happens with the finishers is that when they bump into that middle, into that halfway trap, instead of withdrawing from the book, they actively look for a way to get their bearings again. So if the halfway trap looks like this, in fact, let me just share my screen with you. I'll share the other tab so that you guys can see the pattern. If the halfway trap looks like this, so you get lost and then you withdraw and then you start again, the way that finishers do it looks more like this. Get lost, get clear, and then get back to work. And then you get lost again, because it's definitely going to happen. And then you get clear again, and then you get back to doing the work. And you repeat that cycle until eventually the book is finished. Every time you lose clarity, every time you lose your bearings, you get your bearings back again instead of retreating. Now, if you're thinking, how do you do that? I'm going to explain that in a second as well. But the first thing that I want you to know is that that mess in the middle, that point where you get lost and you feel like kind of giving up or doing something else, is actually a normal part of the writing process. So if we imagine like a map of the writing process, which I'm going to give you at the end of the class today, that big desert in the middle of the map where everybody gets lost, that's not something that just happens sometimes. That happens every time to every writer. It's actually a natural part of the journey. The only difference is that the people that get stuck in that halfway trap, when they hit that messy part, their instinct is to withdraw. Whereas when finishers hit that messy part, they look for orientation. Okay. So far, does this make sense? So far, does this make sense? Excellent. Okay. Now, there's probably a lot of how-to questions. Like, I get the concept. I just don't really get what you mean by orientation. Like, I don't get how to do that. We are going to go to that next. Okay. So this begs the question now, how to become a finisher and how to get out of the pesky halfway trap. So now what I'm going to do, and this next bit you're going to want to write down. I'm going to give you the most important concept today, and this is what I call story clarity. And story clarity is your answer, and this is the thing that everybody here needs to look for if they want to clear the fog and get back to making progress with their book again. So if the halfway trap is being disorientated, then story clarity means getting your bearings again. And story clarity is a state of knowing I know what works in my book, I know what doesn't work in my book, and also I know what the book needs next, and I know how to do it as well. In other words, the path forwards, the next thing that your book needs is clear to you. Now, when you find yourself stalling and you find yourself avoiding your novel, it's usually because you lack that clarity. But I want to make a distinction quickly. There's a difference between clarity and certainty. So when I'm describing story clarity, it doesn't mean that you have like a perfect understanding of every aspect of your novel and you can't move forwards until you're clear on everything perfectly. That's not story clarity. That's complete certainty, which nobody has, right? So I'm not saying that your whole story, your whole vision of your story needs to be absolutely perfect before you can move forwards. What I'm saying is you just need enough clarity for you to take the next step. You just need enough orientation that you're not completely lost in the fog and you can take the next step. Because I think one of the biggest things that keeps writers stuck is that they want to wait until they feel 100% sure before they continue. And finishers don't do that. It's not that they're 100% sure. It's just that they have enough clarity to know what to do next. And then obviously, as you take that next step, more clarity is going to emerge, and you're going to end up in a cycle of moving forwards instead of a cycle of backing away. Does that make sense? Okay, good, good. Now, I want to address something else that some of you guys might be thinking, which is, Max, I don't get derailed from writing because I'm not clear. I get derailed because I have like no free time and I'm super stressed and I have a really difficult job, or my life is just chaos at the moment, or to be honest with you, I'm pretty burned out. Anyone here also feel those things? You can say so in the chat. Um, Here's the thing about those life setbacks. They definitely will set you back, and those things happen to pretty much everyone as well. Um, but your book is capable of surviving all of those things. And writers constantly surprise me with their ability to get through those kind of setbacks and not give up on their books and still come back to them later. So what I've found is that those things will slow people down, but they're not what tends to really kill the project. What actually kills the book isn't life setbacks. It's you opening the document and looking at it and having no idea how to move forwards. If I had to capture it in one sentence, it would be motivation dies downstream of disorientation. Motivation dies downstream of disorientation. You don't have 100 different obstacles to finishing your book. You just have one obstacle to finishing your book, and that is losing your bearings. Any life stuff, anything that sets you back, you might have to take a break from the book if something happens in your life that pulls you away from it, but you can always get back to it as long as you can get your bearings. Okay. Make sense so far? Okay. Fantastic. So now I'm going to tell you how to get your bearings. Now I'm going to tell you how to get story clarity. How to get story clarity. And this is definitely worth writing down. Again, it's only two things. And the first one is feedback, and the second one is craft. Feedback and craft. So let's talk about feedback first. Part of getting disorientated is just being too close to your own work. And nobody is immune to this, which is why I said it's a natural part of the writing process to get lost, because you can't see the back of your own head, right? So one of the ways that you get story clarity is by using outside perspectives. So I'm talking about editors, beta readers, maybe you're in a critique group. Drop a comment for a second. For those of you guys that are getting feedback, where do you normally get your feedback from? And a massive part of the work that I do in the coaching with people is just giving them an outside perspective. That's really it. Because that's something that creates story clarity like immediately. So I'm going to show you guys another diagram. Um, what you can see here is the feedback pyramid. These are all the different ways to get feedback. And the higher you go up this, the clearer you feel. And so usually, if you're thinking, I'm lost right now, I'm disorientated. How do I get orientated? Going as far up this diagram as you can, and most of you will be limited either by budget or by available time, right? But going as high up this diagram as you can, the higher you go, the clearer you'll feel, essentially. And so that's one of the ways to get story clarity. That's way number one. Okay. The second way to get clarity is by learning about the craft. So do you guys think you're more likely to get lost if you don't have a map or if you do have a map? Without the map, you're way more likely to get lost, right? The more you don't know what you're doing, the easier it is to lose your bearings. The more you learn what you're doing, the faster you're going to be at reorientating when you get lost. So when I say craft understanding, what am I talking about? I'm talking about learning how to plot, learning about story structure, learning about character arcs, and also some of the technical stuff as well, like point of view, showing, not telling. You guys have heard of these ideas before, right? So there's a lot for new writers to learn. Do any of you sometimes kind of feel a bit overwhelmed by how many different concepts there are? Yeah, there's a lot. Anyone here go on YouTube and there's so much writing advice it makes your head go 360 like The Exorcist? Yeah. So um, there's a lot for new writers to learn, and picking up the craft is it's not just something that you do in one evening. It's something that you're always doing. So you're always learning more about writing as you go. And obviously, my intention is that the coming 3 weeks are going to help with this as well. But the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this point is uh, don't wing it. Don't wing it. You can be a pantser, that's fine. But even if you're a pantser, please take your time to learn about the craft. Still take your time to learn about story structure. Still take your time to learn about character arcs. You're gonna need it. Winging it, which basically means, I'm not even gonna think about any of the craft. I'm just gonna write whatever comes into my head. Guys, I know that that's really fun at first. And that works while you're still on the honeymoon. But as soon as you hit that muddling middle, winging it is just gonna land you straight in the halfway trap. And you're going to realize that to get out of the trap, you're just going to need a better understanding of how stories work and how writing works. Improvising ultimately isn't going to be enough for most of us, right? And so the difference that you can see looks like this. This is the difference between the halfway trap. If you are finding yourself, you're isolated, you're winging it, when you get lost, you withdraw and you're waiting to feel sure about everything, that's the halfway trap. The finishers, they have feedback. They're always learning. When they get lost, they look for orientation, and they're also okay with uncertainty as well. Remember, story clarity doesn't mean you're 100% sure about everything. It just means you're clear on what the next step is. That's it. Feel crystal clear on what the next step is, and only the next step. Okay. So guys, you've stuck with me through today's workshop. Thank you. There's a couple more things I'm going to share. Here's here's what I hope changes for you after today. I hope that the next time you open up your book and you feel that kind of fog, like I don't know what this story needs next. I want you to not interpret that as this book is just hopeless or I'm not cut out for this. Don't interpret it that way. Instead, I want you to recognize, because you've been through today's workshop, oh, I'm just lost right now. Because that's a completely solvable problem. And remember, getting clear, getting story clarity does not mean that you have to perfectly understand the entire novel before you can move forwards. You don't need certainty. You just need enough clarity that you know what the next step is, clearly. You need enough orientation that you can take a step forwards instead of withdrawing and going to a different book. And sometimes all story clarity means is just that you need to be clear on like one scene, or you need to just have a solution to one plot problem. Or you just need to know what to write next, right? Sometimes that's enough. So finishers are not people who always know exactly what they're doing. They're just people who keep reorientating themselves instead of disappearing. And once you understand that, the book is going to stop feeling like this massive, impossible mountain that you need all the motivation in the world to climb up. And instead, the process, the natural process, is just getting lost, finding clarity, doing the work, and then you get lost again, and then you find clarity again, and then you do the work. And you repeat that cycle. And if you keep going with that, one day you're going to type the end. So here's what I want everyone to do next. And write this down. And I want you to do it tonight or tomorrow morning. Whatever the book is that you've been stuck on, I want you to go back to the book tonight or tomorrow and just reopen the manuscript. And we're not going to perfectly fix everything. We're not going to go back and read it and then make some kind of judgment about whether we're talented enough or anything like that. I just want you to gently re-enter the story and just ask yourself, what does this need next? What's the next step? Not the next 100 steps, just what's the next step? What's next? That's all you need. And I think a lot of you are going to surprise yourselves with what happens if you commit to the book and instead of backing away when you're lost, you look for clarity when you're lost. And when I coach people, that's all we're doing. I'm just making sure that they're basically never lost. That's pretty much it. So, those are the core concepts that I wanted to cover today, and I hope that was useful and illuminating for you guys. So, if you like now, we can do some questions or we can do a little bit of group discussion. So if you guys have anything that you wanted to ask or you wanted to talk about, you're welcome to just drop it in the chat, or you can even just unmute yourself. Probably best if it takes ages to type your whole thing out. So if you have a question you want to talk, just put the letter Q just put the letter Q in the chat and we can answer any questions. We can talk about stuff, anything that you guys might want to ask about or discuss. So we'll do Q&A for a bit and then I'll go and give you guys the poster at the end. Robbie, what was the question?
Okay, I finished my rough draft. You've read it and gave me an ideas of outlines, but now I'm like stuck in editing
Yeah,
and
because
in the structure
because
because I had too much crammed in the book in 8 chapters. And you gave me back 23 chapters,
yeah.
and I don't know what to do next.
Okay. So what you're describing when you say I don't know what to do next is exactly what I'm talking about. So what we can try to do is get you that clarity back again. So I know I gave you the clarity before because I gave you like a plan, right?
Right.
We had an outline for the whole thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
can you be like really specific for me? Like
I'm
where's that falling apart?
um in chapter 1 and chapter 2, as I'm going through things, I'm having a hard time letting go of things. I think it goes with it. Then I reread it later after I've already done that. It's like, no, this don't work right.
Okay.
I'm,
So
I'm,
you're hmm
I'm finding ways to tran make it all flow.
okay. So when you say you're finding it hard to let go of certain material, is it more like just feeling attached to it? Like there's certain
Yes,
stuff you don't want to cut.
yes,
Yeah, so it's killing darlings. Yeah, like Ray said.
yes. I don't like killing darlings.
Yeah. Anyone else relate to that? Yeah. Okay, so again, Robbie, let's just try and figure out a next step. So I'm just going to give you just one next step. Here's what I suggest you do. First of all the edits that we're making them in a copy of the draft, not the original draft. So we're going to make them in a copy.
Yeah, that's
When
what I've been
you,
doing.
that's perfect. When you remove material, put it in a different document, which is like deleted scenes. You know, sometimes movies have like a deleted scenes section.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a similar thing, but let's create some deleted scenes for your book. What you're going to do is, instead of feeling like you're cutting them and letting go of them forever, just cut them out of the main draft and drop them in the deleted scenes. What you can do once you've finished going through the plan and you've cut everything you need to cut is you can go back to the deleted scenes section, look at it again, and decide if you want to put any of it back in. Because you might
Okay.
realize later that some of it actually does fit.
Yeah,
Some of
because
it
I've been using,
may work.
I typed out the first two chapters that I already had written. And I
Yeah.
mean, me and my co-author have been going through that, making little marks. Okay, this goes in this chapter, this will go in that chapter.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a headache.
Yeah, it is a headache. I think somebody earlier said editing is a nightmare. I get it.
I
Um,
prefer writing over editing.
yeah, a lot of people feel the same way. Yeah, yeah. Uh, so you're past the honeymoon. You're in the hard part, but this is the part where we got to stick with it, right? So
Right.
honestly, Robbie, to me, it doesn't sound like you're stuck. It sounds like you know what you need to do, so you actually have the clarity. You just need a little bit less emotional pressure on making some of these cuts. So like I said, instead of just deleting them always and forever, let's just put them in a different deleted scenes doc, and you can add some of them back in later if you really, really want to. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right, thanks. Okay. Debbie. Debbie, you want to go next?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the plan. That's that
Hmm.
thing I was on about, the gardens, right?
Okay.
So Mr. Worthington's going here, Old Tam's going here, uh, Little Poppy's going here, Eliza's going here, right? So their
Okay.
characters are going to land them in one of them gardens. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad that
And
you got a plan.
yeah,
That looks like something I'm gonna have to look at separately. I think
yeah,
I gotta sit down with that and get my head around it. Yeah.
yeah. But I just wanted to show you because you said, right, what's your next plan? What's your next step? That's my step is to align
You got it.
them, each one with
Yeah.
that. Okay. And then that should give me a better story plot for the second
Yep.
half.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about your next step earlier
And
today.
it'll be more understandable, yeah, for
Yeah.
because it's big. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You can send it to me.
Okay.
Thanks, Debbie. Karen, you want to go next?
Hi, Max.
Hey.
I think I'm in revision with the manuscript that I sent you a part of, and um, my problem that I see when I'm revising and reading through it and cleaning up some of the junk that was there, um, I find parts of it to be slow,
Yeah.
and because my characters aren't verbalizing a lot, but they have a lot of thoughts. How
Yeah.
do I how do I fix that in my revision? Because I am reshaping the storyline.
Mm. So there's a few different things going on there. So there's reshaping the storyline,
Mhm.
and then there's some bits are slow,
A
and
lot
then
of it is slow because it's like their thoughts, not
yeah,
not dialogue, you know. So
yeah, yeah. And then there's a lot of internal thoughts which are slowing things down. So Karen, here's what I'd say. So you're actually trying to edit on two different levels there at the same time, which is
okay,
why it's getting a little bit tangled up. I'm going to talk about this in a couple weeks in the editing workshop.
okay.
The There's the big picture edits, which is just plot, which is just what happens. And then there's style editing, which is dialogue, internal thoughts, all of this kind of stuff.
How do I separate that?
So, all you need to do right now is just make sure that what happens in the book is the same as what happens in the plan. Just got to make those things match up. What that
Oh,
means is if a certain part is slow, doesn't matter, just leave it for later.
okay,
As long as it matches what happens in the plan, it's fine. So, you don't need to worry about what's slow and what's fast. You don't need to worry about dialogue. You don't need to worry about internal thoughts. All you need to worry about is I've got to change some of these scenes, might have to rewrite them, might have to cut some of them so that the book matches the plan. And for now, that's all you got to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but when I first wrote this massive thing,
Yeah.
um, it was just off the cuff. Like you said, you can't really move forward if you don't really organize things. And I just wrote. So now I'm looking back at all of that work and saying,
Yep.
wow, I did a lot of things unconsciously, and now I want to look at them more critically. And that's
Yep.
kind of slowing the progress for me.
Yep. And by the way, that's normal. The editing is going to be a little bit more slow than drafting. Because like we said, drafting is just a lump of clay. It's just like letting it all flow out and it's fun. Editing, we're going back and you're right. You got to think a bit more critically about all of this. And you're doing exactly what I said, which is why you're making progress. You got feedback. We did the feedback together, and you're
Yeah,
learning about the craft. You're
yeah.
learning about dialogue. You're learning about internal thoughts. You're learning about pacing. This is good. Like everything you're doing, Karen, is the right thing. If you keep doing this, you will finish the book.
I'm
For
not a
now,
quitter. It
you got
intrigues
it.
to write like this because I really feel like I'm honing the knowledge that
Yeah,
helps a writer become a writer.
you got it. Yeah, you're a finisher. That's it. So what we're gonna do now is don't worry about dialogue, don't worry about pacing, don't worry about thoughts. Make the story match the plan. That's all you
Okay.
got to do. That means cutting some stuff, rewriting some stuff until it all lines up. Might not be the best writing you've ever done, but it all lines up. That's all you have to worry about for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Appreciate
Makes
it.
sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Donald, you want to go next?
I feel like there's too many thoughts, and my character, I'm in the drafting stage.
Yep.
And
Yep.
my character can go this way, go that. There's like three pathways that could go like an Alice in Wonderland. And I
Yep.
don't know what way to send them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
Uh,
uncertainty a little
yeah.
bit.
So again, you're hitting a point of where you've lost your bearings.
Yes.
So send all three options to me, and then we'll look at them together, and then we'll pick one,
Okay.
and then you'll have clarity, and then you just keep going.
There's more than three, just so you know.
Okay, send me all of them.
It
As
happens
many
all
as
the
there
time.
are, as many as there are. I want all of them. Just send me all of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Donald.
Thanks, Matt.
Janelle, you asked a great question. How can I know for sure when I'm ready to publish? So my definition of done, Janelle, is when I've hit a point of diminishing returns with feedback. So what I mean by that is we've gone through rounds of showing the book to test readers, and in the first couple rounds, they have a lot to say. Like there's a lot of patterns of problems. They're dredging up these big issues with the book, and we're going in and we're fixing them. But in the later rounds of test reading, people are getting more and more nitpicky, and these big problem patterns are not showing up anymore. No one really has a big critique. People just have nitpicking and personal preference. And when you get to that point, you've kind of gotten to a point where you've done everything you can do with editing. The book's never going to be 100% perfect, but you're at 95 at that point, which is good enough. And at that stage, I would say you're good to start sending to agents if that's what you want to do, or you can move on to polishing it so you can self-publish it. So we're getting it to 95% and we're getting it there with feedback, and we're done when no one else really has any big criticism for us. Benjamin, you want to go next? How's it going? Yeah, it's good to see you. You just got to unmute yourself since I can't hear you. Should be somewhere in the bottom left of the screen, probably.
Okay, so this is, I'm a playwright and a screenplay writer. I always get to a point that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar. And the question that comes up for me, and it's really coming up for this novel I'm writing,
Yeah.
what happens next?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know where to find that.
Yeah. So because we know each other relatively well at this point, Benjamin. I think you're someone that actually feels a bit restricted if you do too much planning.
Oh, I
Uh,
don't do planning at all.
yeah, I know,
It's
I
all
know.
stream of consciousness for me. Pretty damn
Exactly.
good with it. Years of
Yeah,
analysis helped me out.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So when I read your work, there's always like there's a lot of brilliant ideas in there that you just come up with on the fly, which is actually very impressive. But structure can be difficult that way. And a lot of pantsers have trouble with the first draft for exactly this reason. This is why I said at the beginning, I don't recommend that anyone be 100% a pantser. I think just a minimum amount of planning can go a very long way. So what you might want to do is just give yourself 2 or 3 milestones. Like, here's something that's going to happen at some point, and then here's the ending of the book. So I know this and I know this, but the rest I'm leaving. I'm going to discover it as I go along. For example, maybe you decide, because I know your story, there's a scene where the characters are going to escape the mental hospital. We know that's going to be one of the scenes, right?
yeah, that's where I'm trying to get them out of the mental
Yeah.
hospital. I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
I escape,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know how to get them out of there. I
Yeah.
know I got some vague ideas about what I want to do once they get out.
Right. Okay, that's good as well. So you got some milestones there as well. Yeah,
Hmm.
so just
I
just
just don't know how to get them out.
some more of like a how thing for you.
Yeah.
Uh if you want, you can send me an email. We can brainstorm that a little bit if you want to.
Okay.
Or try just writing down some different options on a page. Could be this, could be this, could be this, could be this. Probably three of the ideas you'll cross out and one of them you'll use. Or something else you can do, I don't know if you tend to do this, but this can work, is you just skip the bit that you're stuck on and write the bit that you're clear about.
That's what I thought I'd do.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll just pop them out of the hospital and
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah. And then you come back later and connect the dots.
Yeah, then I'll
Yeah.
connect that.
Yeah.
I
I think
really thought
that's,
about that and listening to you talk. I don't really know how to get them out. I just need to get them out.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Ray, you said, can you reject nitpicking even if it's from a good source? When I say nitpicking, I mean somebody saying, like, you used the words shouted, you should have used the word yelled. It's like, all right, I don't feel so much like that's a big problem with the book that multiple people are going to agree on. That to me sounds like personal preference. And so even if that's coming from a good source, like a professional editor, yeah, you can still say, well, I didn't want to use the word yelled, so no, still your voice, right? Sharon, you had a question?
Hi, yeah. Mostly I've got my main plot in the way I want it to be. I'm
Yeah.
struggling now with the small scenes, the in-between bits,
Right.
and yeah, getting stuck on how to carry those forward.
So I remember a long time ago we did the that sort of basic story structure, right? So that kind of put the skeleton in place. Um, but you can actually plan in a bit more detail than that if you want to. A while ago, I I ran an offer on beat sheets. Do you have access to those?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. No worries. So they are essentially a slightly more detailed planning tool. So if you're staring at the page and you're like, I need a little bit more plan, actually. Like this might not actually be enough plan. I've got the broad strokes, but I'm just drawing a blank on the scene by scene. Um, you might want to try making even a slightly more detailed outline. Um, but again, you don't want to pluck it out of thin air. There's tools for that. So the beat sheets are good for that. So those I'm gonna cover tomorrow. But you can also just message me if you want to pick them up separately as a tool. But yeah, try making a slightly more detailed outline, I'd say, if you need that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Did you have a question?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. If that's a box with a phone number and it wasn't a person, maybe it's me.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if you've got any tips for those of us whose life is turning into chaos, and we think we've nicely got a bit done, and somewhere out of the blue has come this wonderful idea that then the next crisis comes along. And,
Yeah.
and how do we stay concentrated or get the concentration back when we do get a moment in between the next coming crises or other things that need popping up urgently? So it
Yes.
doesn't take us all the time to get back into it and get our head around the novel again and
Sure.
get back into the creative mode rather than to just reading back the old notes about word counts and what
That's a good
chapters it's got to
question.
cover and get into the creative spirit again before we've got
Mm.
the next crisis coming up and we've got us lost again.
That's a
Um,
very good
I should
question. Mhm.
I should maybe explain I've had 3 important bereavements in the last 18 months, which
Oh,
have
okay.
the work involved with those tends to keep coming up and getting right on top of everything else. And I think I'm just
Yeah.
getting my head above water and getting back into the creative mode, and then the next deadline comes along and I've got to shelve it and start going through all the paperwork for the solicitors or the
I
estate
understand.
agents or whatever
I
again.
understand. I understand. What's your name? I don't know who I'm talking to.
Rosemary.
Rosemary. Okay, Rosemary. So there's a few different things going on. So you asked about when life is chaos, and you asked about how to get into the mood creatively, and you asked about not having to wrap your head around the whole book again every time. So, Rosemary, the book that you're writing, so do you have a plan? Are you writing from an outline?
It's a very rough outline in my head, and sometimes it keeps changing. And I actually sometimes get into the times when I can have a bash at it, and I get more and more of a clear idea. So, oh, yes, that needs to go in, and this is a good idea, and I need to restructure it a bit, and then I get the next
Yeah. So
note from the
Rosemary,
solicitor. Yeah.
the first thing I'd suggest is for the plan to not be up here, but to be written down somewhere. And if you've got a written plan that really works and it all fits together, then every time you sit down, you don't have to figure out the story again. You can just write the next bit that you planned, which makes it a lot easier to slide back into the project especially when life is chaotic. So even if you're someone that tends to improvise a bit more, I would at least try writing down the plan. I think that'll help a lot. The other thing I wanted to say was sometimes when life gets very chaotic, we really can't write, and you also have to be okay with that. So if you do have, a bereavement or something very difficult happens at work, you simply cannot find the time or the headspace. You treat that like it's a temporary setback. Maybe for a few weeks or for a couple of months, you're not going to be able to get at the book. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're never going to finish it. It's just for now. You'll get back into it because I can tell that you really care about it, right? And the third and final thing I'm going to say is we can't really control what mood we're in, which means you're not always going to be able to get back into a creative headspace. But if you have a plan, at least you know exactly what you're going to write next. And so you can actually sit down and you can make some progress on the book. And you might find that as you write, even though you started not feeling creative, a couple paragraphs in, it's flowing again. You just have to give yourself permission to write regardless of what mood you're in. I hope that helps to some degree.
It sounds like don't blame yourself for not making much progress when chaos is too just
Well, that's a
chaos
big part of
being
it.
chaotic.
Yeah.
Go easy on yourself,
Yeah,
maybe.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
beat yourself up, okay? And guys, that's about it for today. So thank you so much for coming. I hope to see you guys again next Thursday and keep moving. Everybody here is a finisher if you choose to be. All of you can choose to take that approach. If you get lost, look to get reorientated. Don't back down. If you don't back down, everyone here will finish their books, okay? Keep moving. Bye for now.